This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us.
Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. My name is Brian Gill, and I am joined, as always, by my friend and co-host Brad Hill. We are so excited today to be joined by Dr. Brian Toone, Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Samford University. And you may be wondering what a professor in computer science is doing on an outdoor podcast. Well, Brian is not only a brilliant professor, he is also an avid cyclist. And when I say avid, he is at a different level. I would venture to say probably in the 99th percentile of cyclists in America. Recently, Brian competed in the 2023 Paris-Brest-Paris cycling event. It's a 761-mile ride through France, where he finished the endurance race in under 59 hours. We're going to get into that more during this conversation and much more. But first, welcome to the show, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here.
Man, 761 miles. That's a lot of revolutions of your crank and a lot of wheel revolutions. You saw a lot. You crossed 761 miles is a long way, but that's across the country. That would be through several states, depending on what direction you go here in the U.S. But you saw a lot. You experienced a lot. Were there any close calls during that race for you?
No, I mean, there was so many people. There was 8,000 people was the field limit. But I think it ended up being about 6,500 people that actually showed up and did the race.
Did all 6,500 of those finish?
No, I think only about 5,000. I think it was just under 5,000 finished.
People from all over the world?
All over the world. And that was one of the best parts was, I got to ride with people from, Austria, France, the Philippines, Sweden, Finland. There were so many different countries. And it was just great too. And English was kind of the common language because of the international nature of it. Everybody was kind of speaking English. So I didn't really feel left out. Although I did learn some Austrian because I was riding with a couple Austrians who were talking back and forth to themselves. And I was like, hey, teach me something. We got to do something while we're out there riding.
That's a long time, man. 60 hours is, you got to feel that with more than just pedal strokes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's incredible. So no close calls in 761 miles and 5,000.
Well, there was one. I saw one guy in a group when I was actually really struggling fairly early on. A faster group caught up to me, and I tried to hang on, and it happened to be right as we come into a town. And so we're flying through this town, and I was just kind of drifting back. I was like, okay, this is not going to work out. And a guy fell. It was only a few riders in front of me, and I'm not 100% sure what happened. But he fell off to my left, and he got back. He looked okay. But that was the only wreck I saw out of all those riders, all those people. I'm sure there was probably a few more, but that was the only one I saw.
Especially, watching Tour de France. There's always there's odd traffic. There's odd traffic. Furniture they call it.
Traffic furniture, and that
kind of sneak up on you.
Honestly, that was kind of a fun part of this, though, because the Tour de France is well known for that, and here I am in France, riding through these towns, dodging traffic furniture. And I'm like, wow.
All right. So tell us what traffic furniture is. Those of us who aren't as big of a cyclists.
So they have a lot, and a lot of times it's for, some of these towns are fairly old. and they've updated the roads over the years, but a lot of the roads tend to be narrow, and they try and guide the turns, and so they'll put barriers in the middle of the road that kind of direct the traffic. And when you're riding, especially in the big groups, when you're in a big group, you can't see that coming.
You kind of trusting those people in front of you.
You are trusting those people, and it was really good. And that is maybe a little bit different. I'm sure it happens in the Tour de France. They communicate as well, but we're all looking out for each other. We're all on the same team, basically.
Yeah.
Well, and if one falls, a lot of other people fall too. I mean,
yes, and
usually I would think.
Yeah, so that it was nice, everybody calling out the stuff, but it was also exhilarating, if you will, to be flying through the roundabouts. Where the classic, you split and go on both sides of the roundabout and come back together.
That. The overhead views of that during Tour de France to see those overhead views. Incredible, because they're going so fast, right?
Yes, that awesome. Was quite the experience.
How much elevation gain did you guys experience over 760 miles? I mean, had to be.
So I think it ended up being about 35,000 feet.
35,000 feet.
35,000 feet.
A little bit more than climbing Everest.
From
sea level.
You just rode Everest on a bike.
Hey, are you on Strava?
Oh yeah.
Did you get like credit for the Everest challenge? I mean,
oh no. Well, with they have some specific rules about that and everything. I guess technically this would have qualified as an Everest. No, I think the time limit.
Okay.
I think the Everest road.
Surely you got a badge for that, man. 35,000 feet of elevation gain. That's a lot of climbing.
Yeah, but I have actually done a number of Everest things, though, the more traditional ones.
Wow.
Where you're doing just one climb over and over and over again. I've done a few of those here in Birmingham.
Incredible. So you don't just say, "Hey, I think I'm going to go ride across France in 760 miles." There's a lot of training miles that leads up to an event like that, or the race across America. So there's a lot of time in the saddle. Though you didn't have any close calls on the France Paris-Brest-Paris, but I'm sure you have over the years that you've riding. I'm sure you've probably had crashes as many miles as you put in on your bike.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I used to race quite a bit more, and you crashed all the time in races. Where you're the criterium races, the short lap based races where everybody's diving the corners as fast as you can and everything. I crashed a number of times. I used to race the Athens Twilight Race. It was a very popular race over at the University of Georgia right there in downtown Athens. And that course, they get the whole university involved. There's so many college students out there, and then all the cycling fans and family and the cyclists who have raced during the day. I mean, you easily get several thousand people lining that 1 kilometer course.
Wow.
And that was so exciting just to ride that. But one year I crashed 3 times in that race, and I never even hit the ground. I landed on top of other people all 3 times.
Gosh.
And but that was a little bit of luck too, because normally you end up losing some skin when you fall like that. But
I heard one guy, he was asked all the time, there was a pro rider, what does it feel like to crash? And he's like, you can find out. He said, get your wife to get you in the car and go about 30 miles an hour and jump out in your pajamas.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to crash as a pro cyclist.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. What highest speed crashes in a race down in Pensacola, Florida, and we were sprinting at the end. There's a little bit of a downhill to finish this road race, and so we're going like almost 35 miles an hour, and the guy fell right in front of me.
Oh,
laid it down right in front of me, and I'm like, oh, not even. What? I can't brake. What
can you do?
Nothing I can do.
Did everything go slow motion?
Sort of. I don't know if I had a concussion or what, but I ended up in the hospital on that one. Broke my collarbone.
Was that the one where that was pretty serious one, right? Was that
that would? So it's kind of funny. That was September of 2017, and I broke my collarbone. And I'm very very healthy cyclist. Collarbones usually heal up in just a few weeks. So I was actually back riding in about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. Um, and and then I had my most serious accident. I got hit by a car. So that was November of 2017.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
just healed up from the collarbone and was riding again. I was actually down near Chelsea, which is south of Birmingham, and really rural road, county road 55 out there. And guy says he never saw me, just hit me. He was going roughly 55 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And I was very, very thankful, fortunate to be alive even.
Sure.
Because I landed in his windshield. So it popped me up in the air and I landed in his windshield. And when he slammed on the brakes, that propelled me forward at whatever speed, presumably I lost contact with the car fairly quickly. So I'm going 50 something, maybe not quite 50 miles an hour, but I'm launched forward. And what reminded me of this too was the whole jump out in your pajamas, because that ended up being the worst of this was the road rash. At that speed. So I ended up having some real bad problems on my foot, which somehow took the worst of it because it had pulled out of my shoe, just pulled me right out of my shoe. And somehow that ended up being the worst of the thing. So and of course a horrible concussion. I don't remember anything from that. So I'm very, very grateful to still be able to ride.
Yeah, no doubt.
So yeah,
Brian, when we were hanging out this summer, doing some of the faith and learning stuff at Samford, we started talking about cycling, and you mentioned that you were in the Race Across America. Was that in 2019 or when was that?
That was also 2017.
2017.
So in the summer of 2017, I did the Race Across America in June.
So this was before
right before all
September
right
crash,
before,
and then your November. Okay.
Yeah, so that was quite a summer. Summer
an eventful year.
Very eventful year.
And I'd actually done it once before in 2015. So I did Race Across America in 2015. Learned a lot. And knew it wasn't my best. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. Did not know what I was doing. Did not know about. I had been training so many miles, and I feel like I was sort of prepared, but you don't normally just ride 3,000 miles in one shot. And I had not made the connection of piecing together all these long rides, because in my head leading up to this, I'm thinking, okay, just 300-mile rides. Just 10 300-mile rides, just do it. And that lasts really well for about a day. And then by the time you got to do that second one, you're a wreck. But my crew, which was amazing, helped get me through it. But I rode way too fast in 2015. And so when I did it again in 2017, I actually dialed my speed back, and I finished 12 hours faster. And because
more consistent,
I wasn't such a wreck.
Longer.
I could. That first year I was off the bike so much because I had to. I mean, I was over my body. I was going past the limits of my body for sure. But in 2017, you're pushing those limits for sure. Still was pushing them, but I ended up even though I think it was a mile an hour slower, which is a lot over that distance. Yeah. But I was stopped for 24 hours less. Wow. And that ended up working out to being 12 hours faster. So it's a real interesting dynamic there.
So that race is, you said 3,000 miles.
3,000 miles. Yeah.
How long did it take you to do the 3,000 in 2017?
So in 2017, it was right at 10 days.
So you're doing the 300
miles a day. Yeah. And then 2015, it was like 10 and a half days.
For all of our listeners who, just to kind of tell you the humility and the humbleness of Brian, we were talking about it, and I asked him the question we were talking about this summer, and I said, so did you accomplish your goals? I never want to ask, what did you place? That's never something I ask endurance athletes because everybody has different goals and they have different things that they're trying to achieve, personal records and all that. And so I say, did you accomplish your goals? And he said, yeah, I came in third overall, but I was the first American. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? I'm sitting next to like cycling royalty here, and like it's just casually mentioning, this amazing race that he did. And I remember I was at Samford whenever you were doing that. I didn't know you at the time, but I know Dr. Hines, she was kind of helping us to keep in touch with you as you would go. And so
that's awesome,
man, just third overall and first American. What an accomplishment, man. Just congratulations on that.
Oh, well, thank you. But that actually ties back into the Paris-Brest-Paris that I did this summer. And again, completely different, even though it's a bit shorter. I mean, it's much harder, but you basically doing a 760-mile ride, the with no sleep.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing 300 miles and then sleep, 300 miles and then sleep. You're knocking out 760 miles. That's a different ball game. That's a different anyway, so it does tie back to my 2015 Ram and 2017 Ram, the Race Across America. The guy who won the 2015 Race Across America got second at Paris-Brest-Paris this year. And the guy that I was one place ahead of in 2017 got third in Paris-Brest-Paris this year.
Wow.
Those guys are seasoned veterans in this, and this was another learning experience for me.
Wow.
In kind of like it was basically 2015 all over again. I went out way too fast and ended up really paying for that and cost me so much time.
Do you feel like you'll do that race again?
I would love to do this race again. It's only held once every 4 years.
Okay.
And it's considered the oldest organized cycling event in the world.
Is it really?
Yes.
Wow.
They
that's very cool.
They had some early editions from it, like in the early 1900s, but then the current form they started in 1931, and they've been doing it ever since then. And now it's settled on every 4 years. They've been doing that for the past few decades. Every 4 years they've been doing it. And I think there's some strategy. I mean, I don't know all of the reasoning behind that, but I think it's really smart because the French people turn out like anything for this race. And maybe they would do that anyway, but I got to think it's because it's only every 4 years that, it's like a special thing that happens. And it really is amazing to see these people out in the middle of the night. I mean, it's 2:00 in the morning and you have, sometimes just even kids out there, just screaming and hollering at riders as they come through. It's LA. That's, it is incredible.
Gosh, there's so many like details and the minutia of racing, and those are, like you said, two very different races. And so I could totally geek out with you on all like the things that you're doing and nutrition and all that. But one thing, like what recovery for Ram for Race Across America, those nights, what are things that you were doing recovery wise? Are you sleeping in a hotel room? Are you hardcore, popping a tent? What does that look like?
So we did it very different between 2015, 2017. We had an RV, and that's what most people do. They rent an RV for Race Across America because you have a support crew and they have to sleep. And they haven't necessarily been training for 24-hour stretches of riding. And so what we did both years was split the crew in half. And basically you were on for 12 hours and then you were off for 12 hours. And a lot of times I would ride for a good 24 to 27 hours and then sleep for a couple hours and then get going again. So in 2015 though, we had an RV for both years. In 2015, I slept in the RV when it was time to sleep. And there was a little bit of a problem because that RV was very accessible. And since I had already gone out too hard and was
real convenient.
yeah, it was super convenient.
I'll just take a nap.
Exactly. Exactly. So
just a
2017, I'm
small
like,
one
nope.
nap.
Nope. I studied that route. I did both years, but I studied that route and I Googled that, and I did this all myself. I mean, I had an amazing crew, but I this was part of my race preparation is I figured out exactly where hotels were at these points, these mileage, which is why I ended up having to ride like 27 to 24 to 27, sometimes 28 hours to get to the hotel. And I was bound and determined to make it to that hotel. It didn't matter how tired I was. I was like, I really pushed myself. And I think that was also a little bit part of why I was able to knock so much time off, is like I wasn't going to take the easy out and just sleep in the the RV. But we still had the RV for 2017, but it was for the crew. They slept in that, and then I would go on with the other part of the crew, and then we would all sort of rendezvous at that next hotel where I would sleep, and then rotate again there.
Totally solo, or you got some pacers or other riders alongside you?
No, they have some pretty strict rules. You have to, for all of these events. Well, I mean, Paris-Brest-Paris is a little bit different, but for Race Across America and the other one I did, the off-road one, Tour Divide, you can't have anybody that you're riding with. They do have. So one thing though is you are allowed to ride with other racers for 15 minutes, and per day. So like if there's another rider, which is awesome actually, because if you're out there and another rider is catching you, it's usually not, you're both going not super fast. And so they're catching you
far not fast.
and when they do catch you, it is like so awesome to be able to chat with someone other than your crew, to have another racer who's experiencing the same thing. And that, I think that's part of the only reason I finished on the very first day. I had some pretty bad heat problems. The desert, because you start in California, go through the desert of Southern California. And the desert was actually having a heat wave that year. So we had 120-degree temperatures on that after the first night. So waking up that next morning, I just ridden through the night, and you get going. I mean, or you're still riding into that morning. And what got me was it was like 90. I don't know. It was in the 90s by like 9 a.m. And coming from the South, that's like that's bad.
Yeah.
That's
not going to end well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it is 90 degrees at 9 a.m. So there was a little bit of a mental aspect there, but I was definitely having some problems too with the heat, some, I don't know, heat exhaustion type problems. I couldn't see right. And so that's when we hit this town called Hope, Arizona. We had crossed over the border. You do the California, you make it across the border around the faster guys do. They make it into Arizona fairly early, and then you're racing the sun to get high enough out of the low, because you go down below sea level at the bottom of California there, and then into Arizona you're 100 feet or 150 feet below sea level on the course, and then you climb up to like 5,000 feet, and then eventually you climb up into Flagstaff, Arizona. And so that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get there before it's too hot. Well, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It was already 90 something degrees, and I was maybe at 2,000 feet, or whatever Hope, Arizona. And there was a gas station there, and I know it's a long story, but there's a gas station there. Crew took me off the bike and was like, you need to, because that's the other thing. They told us when we rented the RV, it's got a good AC, but it will only cool 20 degrees below the outside temperature. So if it's 120 degrees, the inside of that RV was 100 degrees, and it really was. I mean, it wasn't much relief at all. So there was a gas station in Hope, and they set up a little or my crew had a little like sleeping bag cot thing. And so I just laid down there in the corner of the gas station where it had a little bit more powerful AC to, it was, I don't know, it was probably in the 80s in that gas station though. But of course it felt awesome. I was there for 5 hours. All right, I'm almost finished with the story. So I was there for 5 hours in that gas station, and I come out, and a friend of mine from Georgia, I think we were the only two people from basically the Southeast doing the race that year. A friend of mine that I knew from Georgia happens to be rolling through the gas station. So I had been 5 hours faster than him because I'd been in that gas station for 5 hours. Because again, remember, I went out too hard and was riding too fast. He happened to be riding by right as I was going. So we got to ride together, and I still credit Eric. His name's Eric. And I still credit him with me finishing that race.
Wow.
Because the motivation, the encouragement that we both gave each other for that time that we got to ride together was
winning yourselves,
crucial, man.
Wow.
So
man, a lot of time in the saddle. Lots of things you've seen, places you've been. What you look back on those adventures, if you will, what are some, how have those things changed you, Brian?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that springs to mind is the world's a lot smaller than you think it is. Because I can hop on my bike, and I've done this. I've hopped on my bike and I've rode to Michigan. I actually taught a class at Samford. At Samford we teach the Monday, Tuesday, but a lot of other places get that whole week off. So my family had already left to go up to Michigan for Thanksgiving. So I taught my class on Tuesday and then just rode up there to meet them for Thanksgiving. And you think like Michigan is so far away, even, driving or something, not really. You can bike there if you want. And then also I've done the same thing with Colorado. Just left and just ridden straight out there. And then this past summer, so 2022, I did a race which part of the reason I do have the map back here, is it does have enough of the continent to capture the race. But it goes from up in Canada down to the down into, well, it stops at the border. So you have a race that follows the Rocky Mountains all the way down to.
Is there a Netflix documentary about that race?
Yes, there is. The Ride the Divide. I think there's one called Ride the Divide.
I've watched that before.
And that was filmed a few years ago. So, I mean, it's still pretty much basically the same thing, but I did it just last year, so 2022. And it is it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a survival. I mean, it's really, you're out there in the wilderness with grizzly bears.
You don't have your RV following you around.
No. It's very, very different in that respect.
Man.
Yeah, I still have my bear spray.
Hey bear.
But this year that year, the New York Times wrote up an article about it because they had to rescue. Canada had the Canadian they had to rescue 13 people by helicopter because there was a snowstorm. So there's a snowstorm, and this is the middle of June. So
I was about to ask you, when do you start that race?
We started on June 12th, and about 3 days in, there was a snowstorm that dropped over a foot of snow. And
wow,
I was south of it. I had ridden, so it really got the people who were doing it on a more leisurely pace. Yeah. So those are the ones who were in the bulk of it. I got rained on. I was far enough south into Montana by that point, but the people who got rescued were back up in Canada. Man,
I bet some beautiful sights though.
Oh, it was amazing. It was so amazing. And the Canadian Rockies, They're not as high. The Canadian Rockies they're a bit lower than like Colorado. But the thing about Colorado is the whole area is elevated.
Mhm.
Whereas those Canadian Rockies, they feel a lot sharper and they feel like they're just right there. Maybe because the peaks aren't so far away, but you're riding through this and you've just got these huge snow-covered mountains just everywhere. And then the thing about that race though is you go over the passes, and every pass you went over was a lot of hike-a-bike through the snow.
Really?
Yeah, miles and miles of walking, post
That
holing.
sounds exhausting.
They call
my
it post
gosh.
holing, where you're sinking down into, sometimes several feet of snow that's been there for however long, the whole winter, but you're sinking down into that as it's melting too, so it's all wet,
Slushy.
Yes. And so you're going through that. It was very, very hard.
Are you taking a tent? Are you basically bike packing the whole way?
So yeah, it is considered a bike packing race, but the really fast guys, and I really, again, it's kind of a theme, 2015, trying to, race across America as fast as I can.
Always learn a lot.
Yes. So 2017, I didn't take a tent. The fast guys don't take tents, because you can find places to sleep. Eventually you get to the lodges. But even early on, you have a lot of vault toilets. And so I ended up sleeping. They call that a Montana Hilton. So I only ended up sleeping at one Montana Hilton. But there's shelter that you can find, but you're more limited. And because of all that snow early on, and my realizing just, okay, this is legit dangerous here, I would call it early. So like if I'm riding on one of my adventures around here, I have no problems just riding straight through the night. Crossing these passes with the snow, I was just not going to do that at night with bears, grizzly bears coming out of their hibernation.
Yeah, that snow melt means that's wake up time.
So I would call it early, and if there was a hotel, a lodge or whatever, I would just say, okay, I'm stopping here. So very
not only
quickly,
are they waking up, but they're waking up
hungry.
Hungry.
And I saw four bears, and they were all in Glacier National Park, or right beside that in Montana. Two grizzlies, a mama grizzly and her cub, and then two black bears, and it was all the same day.
Pedal faster.
My goodness.
So you said the world is small. Much smaller than you realize. What are some things you learned about yourself, through all of this? I mean, this is a lot of suffering and endurance, and there's dark nights of the soul on these races. I know,
yes.
And I feel like Ironman feels like very minuscule compared to the things that you've done, but in the back half of Ironman, you have a lot of soul searching.
Yes, I did the 2006 Ironman Florida. I walked the second half of that marathon.
I walked most of mine, so it's okay.
I tried to trot the first half, and then it was like, nope, I'm walking the next 12.
I did that in 2015. I did Panama City. I remember.
Oh, nice. No, but I still haven't finished my race report from 2017. I still have a drafts in my cycling blog, and I at this point I'm probably not going to finish it, but I made it to Kansas in the race report. So I have this detailed write-up of everything all the way to Kansas, and then I stopped because Kansas was quite traumatic.
You black out.
Well, we had a tailwind coming out of eastern Colorado that was sweet. So it was it was like a 20 mile an hour, tailwind. You couldn't feel any wind, so it was however fast you were going, that's how fast the tailwind was. And
it switched.
And it switched. It was a horrible 180. And the crew, my wife was on the crew both years, and she calls me on the cell phone because we didn't fool with the radios. It was that was something we learned in 2015. was those radios that you try and use. No, I could never hear. I could never hear anything. So I just keep my cell phone on the mounted on the bars, and she just put on speakerphone, and then we could talk that way. Anyway, she calls me from right behind. So she calls me and says, "Hey, there's a storm coming, and it's not looking good." And so when that storm came, it totally flipped that wind, and it was bad. And this was right as we're going into Kansas, which is notorious for, being relatively flat and very windy. And we had this one night that trying to get to that hotel. And I mean, I just broke down. I mean, I was sobbing. Like that hotel, I cannot make it to that hotel. And I was doing everything I could. And the thing about it is as a racer, you are convinced that everybody else has a tailwind. And there's no way to convince yourself that, no, everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's struggling with the same thing. At least in my mind, I just could not make it past that. I'm thinking everybody else is flying, and I'm going 5 miles an hour, on a flat road into this 30-mile-an-hour headwind. So yeah,
in that life though.
Yeah.
Don't we do that in life?
Yeah.
I'm the only one with a 40-mile-an-hour headwind not going anywhere.
Exactly. I'm the only one who's got
until you finally say something to somebody, like, you know what, man, me too.
Yeah.
And you discover that, I think there's so many people that are going through similar things, but they don't say anything, and they think they're the only ones.
Yeah.
And there's so much like rest and like, when you finally find out, I'm not the only one. I think we do that not only as racers, but also, just as humanity in general.
Yep.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
but
I wonder. It's
headwind is the worst.
Yes,
like there's no relief. You're going up a hill. There's the downhill, but a headwind, it just never stops.
Right, and from being around here, I'm just used to all the hills that we have in Birmingham, and it's just unusual to be like on such a flatter area where you're not even going to have a downhill anyway. So you're into this headwind, and there's just nothing. There's no relief. You are literally just going forever. It's like you said, yeah.
Going back to that, I feel like probably the reflection piece. I feel like that's such a, I think that's part of this toxic masculinity, where we don't want to be vulnerable with each other because we think that we're the only ones that got this struggle. Yeah. And kind of realizing that, everybody's going through some stuff. Everybody's got a headwind. That speaks really well to just being able to open yourself up and, ask for help, or at least say, hey, is anybody else in the same situation as me? I need somebody to have a headwind beside me.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, part of the reason I did these races 2015, 2017 was really the challenge of it. And I think I learned a lot. Like I say, I haven't finished that blog, and I probably won't. I'm so busy now anyway, but but I did make it through it. Incredible crew to help, tell me over and over again, you can do this, but I really haven't struggled like that. And even with the 2022, it was different, the Tour Divide and all the snow and all the challenges with that. I think my mindset has changed a little bit. It's like, no, I can make it through this. It might take longer than I expected, but I can make it through this. And so I think it is helpful, these challenges to put into perspective, that there is an end. It's not infinite. It's not going to go on forever. That there will be, and I think that has been helpful. So I think I have learned
what a great lesson. There's a great clip of I think it's Tom Hanks, and he's sitting in this room with several other actors, some of them older, some of them younger, and he's like, one of the things I wish I could tell my younger self is, this too shall pass.
Yes.
He's like, hey, you're winning all these awards, and you're making all this money. this too shall pass. You know,
Yes.
this is great. He's like, things are terrible and it's awful, and you think it's always going to be this way. Hey, this too shall pass. You know, it's like, well, what a great word. Because I think about that, you know, is what I work with a lot of families, and, you know, and I'll meet young families that just had a little baby. And I don't know if you have any children or anything, but you have these, there are those moments, you know, when, you know, maybe you have a colicky baby or there's just no sleep. And you think it's always going to be this way. You know, I'm exhausted. The baby's never going to stop crying. We're never going to have another night out together alone, you know, again. No, this too shall pass. It's not going to last forever. You can make it. You're going to make it. I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. That is great. That's like a mantra in the ultra cycling community is this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so good, man.
Yeah. Brian, you're doing some really fantastic research with along with your cycling. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so it actually happened in 2017, dramatic year. So
what a great year to do it. I mean, all of the other cycling things.
So race across America, and then broken collarbone, and then getting hit by that car. But it was really getting hit by that car. It was Shelby County Road 55, which I've ridden a bunch, and it is a very low traffic road. And just out of that project, I wanted to know, well, how many cars passed me on that road, you know, or what is the actual traffic count on that road? And Garmin had just invented, I think about a year earlier.
This is the taillight thing?
The radar taillight, yes. They had just released that, the first version of that about a year earlier than this, 2016-ish.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
And I had it. I had the radar, but the Garmin just straight out of the box is just a safety feature to show you the approaching cars. They don't do anything with the data. They just throw all the data away. So what I did, what my research is, I created an app for the Garmin to record the data. And so it'll display the data. Oh, that's the other thing, is they just show you a dot, which is very handy for safety, which I rely upon a lot, just in my everyday riding, to know how many cars are coming, you know, and where, you know, so those dots are super helpful. But what I did was also put a data field where you can see, you know, how fast the closest car is going. And then also the count, how many cars have passed you so far in the ride. And you can lap count it if you want to do some on the bike. Okay, on this road, let's see how many cars passed me on this road. And so I've got a field that displays that information, and it records everything, all the raw data too, all the raw radar data. It records all that into the ride file. And one of the things I did this summer, so I created that while I was still recovering from getting hit. The idea kind of came from me after that.
Passed a little time and some inspiration.
Yes, that's exactly it. So I started it back then. So that was into 2018, because that was the end of 2017. So in 2018, had the first version up around sometime summer of 2018. And refined it over the years. And just now, this past, so 2023, I finally did the extra piece where when you finish your ride, it'll automatically sync up with Garmin Connect and show you the ride data there. And it will also come across to my website, mybiketraffic.com, where you can see exactly where the cars, it was a manual process. You had to manually upload the rides. And so I had a lot of people who are using the app. It's been downloaded like 45,000 times. But that's just on the Garmin. I only had, you know, a few thousand users who would actually use the website. And then most of those people weren't very consistent, because you have to manually go into yet another website and upload your ride. Even myself, I'd go months between uploading rides to my own website. So so this summer I finally just made the whole thing automatic, and it's amazing how many more people are actually using it. And now once you get that sync process set up, every single ride you do that you got the radar, you got all this data. So now I've got data from like 75 different countries of where people have ridden, and it's been interesting. And that's some of my research right now, is to take all that data and start to make some reports and comparisons, and hopefully I'm actually working with a couple Samford students, seniors, doing research internship this semester, spring right now, and just met with them today. And we're doing my other area of expertise is artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of work in video classification of video data using these AI algorithms, and so I'm teaming up with them, and we're going to be looking at all the video data that I've got to try and correlate how people pass with the design of the road. So like if the road has a 6-inch shoulder versus a 1-foot shoulder, how wide is the road itself? Is there a rumble strip? Is there a passing lane or not a passing lane? Is there a bike lane? What are all these things? And then how does that correlate back to all the data? So that's what I'm working on right now, and it's
interesting.
exciting.
So,
I really like it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A lot of data. Is any of that of interest to, like, say, Alabama Department of Transportation?
That was my question.
That is my ultimate goal. I haven't done a lot with the data yet, so that's part of my very current research. Is to contact people and not just like states, but also cities. Contact the city planners and other transportation planners. I know even Homewood recently. I know they were doing this because I ride everywhere in Homewood, Hoover, Vestavia, but I know Homewood was doing some the chicanes. They were putting some chicanes in some of the neighborhood just to try and cut down on people speeding through all these neighborhoods. And so it'd be interesting to have sort of an on the bike view of that kind of road design and the impact on cars. And
they were trying to do that. They were testing that in my neighborhood, in Forest Brook, and it didn't go well. People just busted straight through the straw.
Did they really?
I know. I would see that. I'd be like, "Oh, look, somebody just drove right over."
They're like, "Yeah, watch this chicane what?"
It's in the old F-150.
Oh yeah. You're not good.
Like Ace Ventura.
I did notice that when I was riding through there.
Wow, ruts right across it, huh? Wow.
So, Brian, what's what is something that you've learned about your faith or about God through spending so much time on the outdoors on your bike? I mean, what are some reflections that you've had from a spiritual side?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, one is definitely God's creation, just the beauty of the outdoors.
I mean, you saw some beautiful sunrises and sunsets.
Oh yes. I love the sunrise, sunset. I mean, sometimes it's the same ride. I did one recently. Well, the Paris one. I did one recently. Yeah. So it was the Paris one. Was a sunrise, sunset ride. So you saw all those in one ride.
That's incredible.
And they were actually the sunset on the one day was these beautiful flowers. Why I'm losing the name? Sunflowers. The sunflowers. Yeah. Just giant sunflowers.
Fields of them.
All lit up. This was coming the one way, and then the sunrise the next morning. I got this good picture of the Austrian that I was riding with, and with the sun coming up, and so there's that, and of course all the mountains and the snow and everything. So you do have that, but also there's a lot of time for reflection. Thinking about relationships and my family relationships, and being thankful. I mean, half the time I'm just sitting there, how do I get to be so lucky to be out here still alive and able to do this. And so just the appreciation, the thankfulness for that is been phenomenal. Yeah. So.
And that's awesome. I can't imagine seeing the Rockies like you saw them. I mean, that's just being able to see that and just appreciate God's bigness. You
Well,
say the world is a lot smaller place, but I feel like it makes God feel a lot bigger.
oh yeah. Well, okay. So perfect example. You start out with those Canadian Rockies, and of course, you want to take I'm not by any means a very good photographer, but I have my phone, which I can take, pictures with. And, I mean, you just want to sit there and take pictures of every single thing,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it is incredible.
Yep.
And so you have all that at the beginning and you finish in the desert. And what happened is the day before I finished, there had been a storm somewhere in the desert. I didn't get rained on, but I could kind of see over there. Well, there was a flood. So out of that was a flood. And by the time I made it to this one part of the course, I mean, it was several feet under rushing water. And so I called, there's a guy, so this race is like, I mean, it is definitely a race, but it's also underground kind of race, if you will, like nobody wants to have liability sort of. So but there is kind of one person who coordinates everything. And anyway,
I know a guy. Okay. I know a guy who knows a guy.
Exactly. So anyway, so I have his number and, or he gives, I text him? I think
Is his name Vinny? Is his name Vinny?
Anyway, I said, hey, man, there's a raging flood on this road. The police are not letting, there's police there. I physically cannot cross this. And so, and I mean, it wasn't that big a deal. There's 3-mile detour where I could go around a bridge. But, you're supposed to follow the course. So I wanted to find out, make sure, hey, is this okay? And what do we need to, how do you need to communicate that? So he communicated that to the other racers too. But anyway, so I went around. But anyway, in his last text to me, he said, congratulations, you're almost done. Enjoy the Separ desert. He's like, it is going to be surreal. And it was. So I spent the night there in the town that I was near after that. I spent the night and then I had 100 miles left. And you go through this desert and it is about as opposite of Alabama as you can get. Like not a single tree.
No trees.
No trees. And you were up high basically from coming out of the mountains, and you could look out and just see. I mean, it wasn't like a flat desert or anything. There was rocks and mountains everywhere, cactus and things like that you could just see stretching out forever, and extremely different from the Rocky Mountains I had just come through, at the beginning of the race. And it really was. It was very impactful to the difference, the different environment. And so it was.
That's amazing. I love it. He just nonchalantly got 100 miles left.
Just, just
through a desert.
Just a ride through the desert,
All right, couple quick hitters, Brian. Road bike or mountain bike?
So now because of the Paris-Brest-Paris ride, after I finished that bike, which I did on my Salsa, which is a gravel bike, and I absolutely gravel bike.
Salsa, those are cool. I love those.
I had Salsa Cutthroat, and it was specifically made for the Tour Divide. Like it is the course. Really? I mean, it is a bike that just has the right geometry for bike packing. It has a map.
That's the one I've looked at. I was like, I would like to have that because I would like to do some bike packing. Not to that.
I mean, it's got room. It's got so much room for everything on the bike. So many mounts, bottles, and for bags. And on the down tube, it has a map of the Tour Divide. All the cities that you go through painted on the down tube. And cool. I'd say about half the bikes. Maybe a little bit under half, but about half the bikes are that people that race that race do it on that bike.
That's not fair. That's right in between. That's like half road bike, half mountain bike.
But it's perfect for me because the guys at one of the shops here in town, when I'd bring in my road bike, they're like, dude, this is what a mountain bike rider's bike looks like. What have you done? And I would do, I would go ride. I'd ride trails, gravel, everything on that road bike. So the gravel bike really made sense for me. I could still ride the road, fast. Faster than a mountain bike. I could still ride pretty good, but then I could also just take it wherever I wanted to.
It'll be my next bike purchase. That's probably
it is a all-round bike. It is awesome. Florida, I mean, Florida is incredible. I love riding in Florida, and I wouldn't want to ride in Florida on my road. I've done most of my riding in Florida on that gravel bike, and it is incredible the access you have down there on that bike. But I have been riding my road bike a lot more recently, training for the Paris-Brest-Paris. And I probably will for a while, just, with the ultimate goal of going back, hopefully in 4 years. But I do love that gravel bike. And I love mountain biking too, because I coach the mountain bike team. I'm one of the coaches at the Spain Park high school mountain bike team. And
that's cool.
I love riding with the kids. Both my kids have my daughter's in college now, so she's off the team, but my son is still racing. He's his last high school senior, so he's racing one more year. So it's awesome. It's super fun to ride with them, with my own kids, but also the just all the kids on the team. It's been fun. And try and keep up. Try and keep up.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can keep up. I feel confident you can keep up. So you eat all kinds of things. When you're riding that amount of time and amount of time in the saddle, you're whatever kind of food you can get. I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's one of your go-to nutrition things? You're like, this brings me so much comfort on the bike.
Oh, well, okay. So we got comfort and we got good nutrition. So I try.
We got function.
One of each.
And they're both important. Honestly, they're both important, especially on the long distance stuff. But we'll start with the good nutrition. I'm a fruit guy, so bananas and apples. And those. The nice thing is you can find those in a lot of gas stations, not all the gas stations, but a number of them. And that's almost my entire refueling throughout a ride is gas stations.
Right. Because you can only carry so much on your person. Right.
Exactly. And so it's kind of funny, you can have these fancy bars or something. Well, that's only gonna last like the first 3 hours or 4 hours of a 24-hour ride.
Right.
So
Brian's got a baguette in his jersey.
Oh, well, that was France though. That was one of the learning things. I do need to.
How do you carry a charcuterie on a bike? Yeah.
well, seriously, that's what they had at the checkpoints. So you had to, at these checkpoints. I mean, it was French baguettes, sandwiches. I mean, that was the big thing there, and the pan of chocolate, the pastries, these pastries that have chocolate filling. So lots of pastries, and then these baguettes.
Stroop waffles, they do stroop waffles and stuff like that too.
I did not see any waffles, but they would have, some of these checkpoints would have full meals, so like pasta and stuff. And a lot of these were at like schools, so school cafeterias. And it would be like an official checkpoint that you went into, and that's part of the race to prove that you had gone to the whole course. Cool. You had to go and get something. You had to get your brevet card, is what they call it. You had to get that signed. Stamped. That's right, and that's so cool. I was just looking.
You have it?
I do. I don't know.
Let's go. Get it. That's cool. I love that.
I don't know how well it'll come across in the camera, but each town has their own unique stamp.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is so cool.
Like a little passport.
Yes, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had a crazy trip to get back to Birmingham that involved taking a train from Paris to Copenhagen, Denmark.
So they call this a digital campfire, and this would be your go-to campfire story. So tell us that story. Well, the thing about that was it was kind of
I hadn't slept in a while. When I finished, because it took me about
60 hours.
yes, and it took that 60 hours was about. I would have been happy. I mean, I was super happy to finish, super happy. And I was shooting for about 10 hours faster than that. So, but this is, I'm not disappointed, not disappointed, but I do think I can do it faster. They do have an award for Americans, specifically for Americans who can do it in under 56 hours. And I just missed that. And the significance of that is one, there's very few who do that, but also the first American who was able to finish this ride, that was their time. And so they call it the Charlie Miller Award after this American. I don't know what year it was, but it was a long time ago. And so that's my goal. I want to go back and do that. But anyway, my trip, I was so protective of this thing right here. So protective. I was like, I am not losing this. Like my real passport is basically like, this was as important to me as my real actual passport. I was not going to lose this. And it's sitting up on my wall right here next to the, computer, because it's very special to the way they do it. And with each town, and it's an awesome memory of a lot of suffering, but also, the camaraderie with the other racers. I'm, friends with several of them now online, and it's just been incredible.
There's no bond like the bond of suffering. Let's be real.
Yes, me and a guy from Pennsylvania, Jeff, who we've already committed. He was also going for the Charlie Miller time, and we ended up riding together for a while. He's from Pittsburgh, so like the Birmingham of the North, or we're the Pittsburgh of the South. But anyway, we're already like, we're going back in 2027, get that Charlie Miller time. So.
Got to get it. So tell us about the trip home. You said it was a difficult one.
So train ride.
Yes. Okay. So
planes, trains, and automobiles, or we're talking like that serious?
Yes. Yes.
All
so
right.
I took the so I was about 10 hours slower. I had already booked my train tickets. So I had booked my train tickets from Paris to Amsterdam, and then a separate ticket from Amsterdam to Copenhagen. And I had already booked the hotel. I was going to spend the night in Amsterdam, and then spend the night in Copenhagen, flying out the next morning. And I finished about 3 hours before my train left. No, I guess I finished about 6 hours before my train left. But one thing about this race is the hotel that I found was 27 miles from the start. So I had to ride. So the day before the race, I rode 27 miles to pick up my registration stuff, then rode back to the house, or back to the hotel, 27 miles. And then the day of the race, I rode 27 miles to start, did the race. And then at 3:00 in the morning, I finished at 3. So at 3:00 in the morning, I had to start my trip home to Alabama by riding 27 miles back to the hotel.
Just a little recovery ride. That's all.
and I was so sleepy that 27 miles took 3 hours, and I fell asleep. So I was riding, and it was very confusing. It was I'm trying to follow Google Maps, bicycling directions, and it was super confusing because there was a combination of roads, trails, bike trails, and it was pitch black dark. So I would get confused and lost, stop, straddle the bike, look at my phone, and then I would wake up. Like I would be staring at the phone, and then I would sort of with a start realize I had fallen asleep.
Oh my goodness.
And then that would kind of wake me up so I could then go some more, figure out what I was doing, where I was going, and everything. Make it back to the hotel, and I'm supposed to take public transportation. I had, the plan was to take the metro into downtown Paris where I could pick up the train. But my buddy Luke, so I also did not do this race on my own bike. So I borrowed my friend Luke's bike, which he had ridden, and he's from here in Birmingham. So Luke, a good buddy of mine whose family, he grew up in Homewood. Good buddy of mine that I've ridden with forever. He's now doing a ministry over in Birmingham, England. So he's in England now, in the other Birmingham, and he's doing ministry there. And he, I'm like, hey man, can I borrow your bike? And he's like, sure, I'll just ride it down. So he rode his bike down to Paris, right? I picked up his bike, or he rode to the hotel. I swapped over the pedals and everything, rode his bike, picked up the registration stuff. And then when I finished the ride, I rode it back to the hotel where he had been. He was able to just stay there for the 2 days I was gone. And so he could see around Paris and everything. So I'm like, I get to borrow his bike and he gets to sightsee Paris. Like, this is win-win for everybody. But anyway, so he's like, do not get on the metro. You are not going to, you are going to fall asleep, and you're not going to, and he's right. So I ended up taking an Uber to the train station, get on the train, make it to Amsterdam. Amsterdam was incredible. It's considered the number one place for biking in the world.
In the world, yeah.
And there were so many bikes. And you have these canals and these bridges. And did I say there were so many bikes? I mean, there was easily 2-3 times as many bikes as cars, maybe 4 times as many bikes as cars. And so me being the avid cyclist, I'm awake. I slept a little bit on the train, and then I wake up. So I rented a bike. There was no way I was not going to ride a bike in Amsterdam. So I walked to a bike shop and rented a bike and just rode it around, just had a great time, ended up having a dinner, get to the hotel. Keep in mind, I still haven't slept other than a little bit on that train ride to get to Amsterdam. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to write up a blog. So I fell asleep on the bed, fully dressed, basically nothing unpacked, which is very important, because I woke up the next morning because it's basically too bright outside. It's like, oh no. I had a 7 o'clock train. And I woke up and I was like, it's very bright. And I mean, fully alert.
What time is it?
It was 6:43. So I had all of my stuff.
You're already packed. You're already dressed.
I've got 1 kilometer. I was 1.1 according to Google Maps walking directions, 1.1 kilometers from the train station. And I grabbed my stuff and I ran. And I had a lot of stuff. So I had the 2 backpacks. I probably had like 40 pounds of stuff between the 2 things. So I'm sitting there running through Amsterdam as fast as my little legs could go.
After having done what you've done.
I could picture how I would be running after having ridden that many
I know,
miles.
just as after the ride. So I get to the train station at 6:56. Okay. So I make it there in whatever that is, 13 minutes. And so I was not running fast, but I made it there at 6:56. And you already had a ticket, is on the phone. So the app, I have the app open and it worked first try. I threw the phone up there and they have a little camera to scan it, and it worked to let me into the train station, because they don't even let you into the back part unless you have a ticket. So I was able to get in, and this is like 6:56. And you have to make it through this train station to the right track. My train was not the final destination. So the city where I knew I needed to change trains was not listed because it wasn't the final destination. So I just picked the train that was my time, and there's a bunch of trains there. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be that one. So I ran up there. I get to the platform at basically 7, and the train was supposed to leave at 7. And the conductor, one of the workers who was standing in the last car, sees me running and is waving. Right, he is waving at me to to come, And so I run up there and he's like, get on. And we leave.
And you're not completely sure that this is the right train, though, right?
I wasn't 100% sure, but I was like, it's 7:00. It was the only one. They had the times listed. The next train. It was the only one that was my exact time. So I'm like, and it was heading to Berlin. So and I knew I was changing trains in Germany. So I'm like, I'm heading to Germany, wherever this train goes. But I sat there on the floor for a good 10 minutes.
Oh,
and I was like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. He's like, take it, because he got on the train with me, and he's like, yeah, take your time. You don't have to go anywhere. So I sat there on that floor with my bags and stuff, just sitting there on the floor, probably a good 10 minutes. Like,
it's taking me 800 miles to get here on foot.
But I mean, it was pretty uneventful then. From then, other than I could talk for hours though. But there was the very nice family from Switzerland at that train where I was supposed to switch. In another very busy train station, and I had to walk. This was the worst part. I had to get off the platform and walk up a pretty big flight of stairs.
Your legs are just gone.
It wasn't too much of a problem. I could do one step at a time. I couldn't do step. I could do one step, bring the other foot up, one step, bring the other foot up. I could do that, no problem. But going down, because I had to go down to another platform, that was excruciating. And it took me a while to get down, and I'm like holding onto that railing, trying to support my weight and all the bags and everything. Anyway, so I get down to, and I asked this lady, this very nice lady from Switzerland, you got to keep in mind, there's probably 1,000 people. There's easily 1,000 people in this area with 10 different trains, maybe not 10, maybe 6 platforms, 2 sides, three different stairways. Anyway, a bunch of trains. Tons of people. And so I asked her, I'm like, is this going to Copenhagen? And she's like, yes. And so I'm like, I did not want to, this is at the top of the stairs. I'm like, I'm not going down those stairs.
Not going down.
If I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, so I go down there, and this is in Hamburg, Germany. And down there, just got about 15 minutes. Not a long time, about 15 minutes till the train is coming. Then everybody leaves. Everybody just leaves, and I'm like, something just happened.
Oh
right?
No.
and there was no announcement, or if it was in German. And they had changed our platform, so literally have to go back up the stairs. And I ended up talking, and most people could speak English, so I ended up just asking somebody like, hey, where's everybody going? And they're like, they changed platform. Go back to the same platform I got off on. Back up the stairs, go back down to that exact same platform. And then by this point, the train was, of course, they weren't going to just leave without all of us, everybody, because there's a few hundred people, a couple hundred people maybe just getting on this train to Copenhagen. And train was ready to leave though. So we had to go and get on the train. And so again, there's, I don't know, 8 cars, 10 cars in this train. And when I am sitting next to this woman. So I am sitting next to her, like
the same lady, the same
lady, the same lady that I had talked to was sitting next to me. And she was dying laughing because she was actually with her son. And she was great. I mean, I could understand her, but her English was not like, obviously it was English as a second language, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she was so worried that the American, he's not going to make the train, because I was down on the other platform. And of course we had gotten separated with all those people from when I had first talked to her.
And you ended up sitting by her.
And then I end up sitting right by her.
How funny.
And that was such a great, honestly, that train ride, we had 6 hours together, and it wasn't just the way that was set up is there were 6 of us seated together in like one of those, I don't know, booths or something.
Yeah.
There were 6 of us together, and man, we had a great time. The 6 of us,
That's
2
cool.
from Switzerland. And then I think the other the other three people, one was from Denmark, and then the other two people were from Germany. And
I
then
wish train travel was more normal for the U.S.
it was fun. It was a great experience.
I wish I could have seen your face though when you woke up, like, dude, where's
Oh,
my
oh, that was it too. And I mean, I knew instantly, based on the light.
Oh,
I was
no.
like, it is, yes. I was like, it is not dark out. I needed to leave when it was dark. And then I saw the 6:43, and then that's like a whole other level. It's like, oh, I can still make it.
Oh my gosh.
So that's like 0 to 60,
Wow.
instantly.
Yeah,
That's
no
amazing.
time for coffee. No need for coffee there.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, with
Exactly.
plenty of coffee. Well, man, you've had so many adventures. My goodness, you've had so many adventures. What's your next adventure that you're planning for, or you have on the horizon?
The next one, and it is it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to be away from family and everything. But I think I want to do the Trans-America race, which is a 4,000-mile self-supported road version of Race Across America. So it's kind of like the Tour Divide. So the Tour Divide is the off-road gravel version.
Yeah.
2,700 miles. Oh, I'll hold that thought for just a second. And then the Trans-America is 4,000 miles from Oregon to Washington, D.C. And you just don't go straight there.
Is that the one
go
that's
all over?
That's not the one that's got the rail to trail system that's in the northern.
It is. It uses a big chunk of that.
I want to do some of that. That looks amazing.
It uses. I think the finish is all on that. But the opening, they're actually doing something new for this year. For the first time, this coming summer, the first time they're going to give 3 route options. And I want to do the original, which is the long one. But they do have 2 shorter options. But I want to do that original one just because they've been doing it now for I don't know how many years, but I want to do that route. So that's the next one. And I don't know for sure if it's going to be next year because it is a lot of time. I mean, I could definitely do it next year. It's just a matter of, does that work with family and what are the other things going on? But that's my next kind of big one.
Man, that's awesome. Brian, this has been so much fun, and thank you so much for the time that you spent with us tonight, and just all the cool things you're doing at Samford and across the world on your bike. Man, it's nice to know you.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. This was fun. It is fun. It is really fun to tell other people about. I mean, that is half the reason I do these adventures is I want to, even from my undergrad days at Clemson. That's what really hooked me was starting there at Clemson. I'm on my own for the first time in my life as a freshman in college, and my parents dropped me off. I have my bike. I just go ride my bike into the mountains. I did that the day they dropped me off. I took my bike and just rode it straight into the mountains, and I thought, yep, I found the right place.
This is your place.
But the thing is, though, is I'd have all of these adventures there, and so many times it was just by myself, and I would, missing being able to share that, wanting to share that with other people. So half the time I'm doing this stuff, I want to, all my friends and everything, I want to tell them the stories when I get back. Of course, man. I do have a number of friends who, some really good friends here who are up for those kinds of adventures, and so I always enjoy being able to go with, not by myself, be able to go with a couple other guys to do a 300-mile ride in the middle of the night somewhere. I was just talking with my friend Michael the other day. We did this one ride and we rode together all the way into Georgia. We just left. We just left like it. I don't know.
How does your wife feel about that? Your wife,
she was leaving. So my wife was taking with a good friend of hers, her 2 kids and my 2 kids. This was 10 years ago. So they're about, our kids are still in elementary school. This was their spring break. As it was the Friday of starting of the spring break. So they were going down to Disney World. So I was going to be my home for a week because Samford spring break didn't line up with, so I was going to be home by myself all week anyway. So my buddy Michael and I, hey, let's go ride to Georgia. So we rode over, and Oh, so many, and that's just a highlight for me to be able to do that with other people as well and share that. So all that's to say, thank you for inviting me on, so I could relate some of my stories.
I loved hearing them. Anytime you want to share a story, you let me know.
Okay.
Well, I hope honestly, I know you talked about not finishing your journal, man. I hope you sit down and carve out some of those things and see what pours out of you as you recall some of those stories and those adventures from that race journal.
Yeah.
That's such a good exercise to even if you said, I'm going to write the big memories down, and, who knows what might surface and how valuable that might be for your family to go back and read one day. I mean, that's one of the motivations for us on this podcast is we said from the very beginning, if no one ever listens to this, our children will have a wealth of audio of their dads telling stories and having conversations and sharing, their adventures recorded for them to go back and listen to. I would kill to have that.
Yeah.
My dad's voice recorded and to hear some stories that I heard him tell before, but I can't really recall them, and I kind of remember bits of them. Yeah. But to have a recording, man, that's gold. And so that's one of the motivations behind what we're doing. So, man, I hope you do that. Sit down and go, I think I need to finish that up and write it out, even if it's like, the Cliff Notes version of it. It's so good.
Or get your microphone.
I got to make it past Kansas.
Just get your microphone and start recording the audio. Just start telling the story.
Well, my wife sprung this on me the other day. She wants to start a podcast.
There you go.
With me. She's like, she wants to do a cycling specific, from the wife's perspective, and then all my adventures. So she and that's her. She wanted.
There you go.
So
that'd be a treasure, man.
Let me know when you do that, and we will share that with our listeners. That would be a great thing.
Okay.
Well, there's nothing quite like balancing on two wheels, and you're going fast enough to go somewhere, but you're going slow enough to take in the sights around you, man. It really is. It's my favorite thing.
That's awesome.
I took some time off, after Ironman, and I really got into a physical, just physically kind of a funk and couldn't get myself back going again. And then I realized, man, I miss riding my bike. I don't miss running. I do not miss running.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
But man, I realized, man, I miss riding my bike. And so, I've been back on the trainer, and I'm waiting on a couple of actual parts for my bike to get back on the road. But it is a blast. And man, I hope that this inspires people to get back out on their bike, because it does make you feel like a kid every time you ride it. No matter how old you get, you bounce on those two wheels and you go a little bit faster, and it's like, man, it makes you feel like a kid, and it brings it out, and it's so good.
Absolutely.
But we hope these stories that you shared today encourage people to do that, maybe to write their own stories and share these adventures in the place that we love to call the storied outdoors.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. We hope these stories encourage you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in the storied outdoors.